general, Audis are pretty comfortably riding cars. Sedans, SUVs, sports car, they all ride pretty nice, and that's generally one of their selling points. And a lot of that can be contributed to their multi-link suspension, which, albeit overcomplicated sometimes, is pretty comfortable. Problem is, with so many different suspension components, that's even more bushings that can fail than a regular sedan. So you end up with control arms that have blown out ultimate bushings, and this bushing you can't really see on camera, I don't think, but there's a good old crack in there, and there's like 1,000 of them on the car. So that's more points of failure, and once your car gets to about around 100,000 miles or even less, then you got to address that issue. And because I've been driving my car a lot more recently, now I have to face that issue, and I've been enjoying not working on my car. But here I am again, and it's not just this car. Whether you're a poor and inbred A4 owner like me, or you bought your car brand new, or if you're an extremely wealthy fifth owner of a 200,000 mile B8 S4 with a mech unit failure, it's gonna happen to you. So that's where 034 comes in. Okay, so you've seen me rep 034 on the channel many times before, and that's because they make quality products, and I'm very happy to have their products on my car and to have them sponsor the channel. These are two of many pieces that come in their control arm replacement kit, and as I said, quality products. They have replacement bushings all around. It's an OEM control arm with new bushings, so the car should handle nicer, it should feel newer, and not as clunky and old as it does right now. And probably a lot of you B8 owners that are watching, yours probably feels like this too, and this applies to a lot of A4s, like I said, not just the B8 A4, but S4s, Q5s, B6s, B5s. Obviously those are different somewhat, but they're still a multi-link, over-complicated suspension with a lot of bushings that go out. So after I do this on this car, I'm going to do the same thing on my B6, but there's a reason a lot of people don't want to do this, and that's because of the pinch bolt. This pinch bolt right here is the bane of every BIA owner's existence. It holds in the two upper control arms quite well, and for a while a lot of places would recommend, if you're doing coilovers or anything, that you take out the pinch bolt and take out these control arms. That's a bad idea. If you're just doing suspension, like coilovers, air suspension, whatever, you take them out at the base, where the control arm meets the top hat. Much easier to do that, and you don't have to deal with this pinch bolt. The reason it's so tough is because this is an aluminum knuckle, and you got a steel bolt in there, and over time that basically just becomes one fused piece of nonsense. And if you live in a place like I do in Wisconsin, the more winters and salt and whatever you get in there, the harder it is to take out. Some people have a lot more luck with it than others, but I've seen several methods of getting it out. I don't know if there's a right way, but in general, if you're taking out this bolt, you're going to want to replace these arms, because by the time you get those out and you get everything out, you get it all heated up, if that's the way you're going, these boots they're done for. So my method that I'm going to go with is impact and heat and hammer. That's seems to be the way to go, especially if you live in a place like Wisconsin. But there are other ways to do it, and if the bolt snaps, then you're in a whole other territory of frustration. So let's cross our fingers that I don't snap a bolt today, because this could be a few hour project that turns into a few week project, and that is not something I want. But it doesn't really matter because it's winter and I'm not really driving the car. But anyway, let's start with the most difficult part, the pinch bolt. And if that goes well, then I think that's a good omen. That's a good sign that the rest is going to go well. Let's do that. The most important tool for any suspension work, I would argue, is the electric impact. If you don't have one yet, I would highly recommend adding it to your toolkit, especially for a project like this. You can see here that the nut on the end comes off pretty easily, but it's the bolt inside the knuckle that puts up such a fight. So it's time to add some fire to the fire. Your results may vary, but basically I'm heating up the knuckle for a couple minutes at a time, then hit it with an impact, then repeat. And with enough luck, it'll come out in one piece. It's also important for me to mention, do not attempt to pry the knuckle open. That's bad, okay? If you plan to reuse your control arms, you probably shouldn't use a torch or work them out with a pickle fork like I am, because after all this, these boots are done for. But if you're already going through all this work in the first place, you should probably be replacing your control arms anyway.
The old bushing right there is a little worn. Actually, it's not as bad as I thought it would have been. However, after all this, it's hard to tell how much it was ruined before and how much worse it is now. That's not exactly how it was. I think that's also because of the heat that I was putting on it, and I was not being gentle taking them out. But either way, not reusable. But these, they look nice.
These are 034's density line replacement control arms, which are the closest you can get to OEM with still having increased handling capabilities. But if you're more interested in handling and performance over comfort, they also offer adjustable control arms with spherical bushings for you to really dial in your alignment on the track. There are also options out there from JXB Performance to retrofit spherical bushings into your existing control arms. So with all those options, you have a lot of customization available to you for these cars. But for now, I'm keeping comfort in mind. As you can see, the bottom arms aren't entirely easy to remove either. But again, thanks to the magic of the impact, hammer, and a little fire, these corrosion magnets eventually can come out. The biggest difference I can see between these old arms and the replacements is the condition of the ball joints. And with the kind of clunks I was hearing while driving, that makes a lot of sense. Thankfully, with all new components and new replacement bolts that 034 includes in all of their kits, everything goes back in much more easily than it came out, which will make my 90,000 mile chassis feel much more refreshed. And as you would expect, the driver's side is basically the same as the passenger, so I won't dwell on that too much. But I did get this cool angle through the strut tower, which is pretty neat. Well, that went better than I thought. Everything went in as it should, and nothing broke. So consider myself lucky. Your results may vary. If you're doing this yourself, I would recommend not doing this the day before you have to go to work if it's your daily driver. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and I just got lucky that nothing did, especially considering I live in Wisconsin. But I'm excited to feel how this thing drives with the new control arms and all new bushings. I'm expecting it'll feel pretty nice and new. But because everything went so well and the car is still in the air, I've got one more goodie from 034 to go in the car, this transmission mount insert. This is honestly one of the first mods a lot of people do to the car. I have aftermarket mounts, just for whatever reason I've never gotten this before, and it's supposed to stiffen up the car a little bit more, give the car a little bit more driver feel, make shifting a little bit more definitive. So I'm excited to see how this will go. It's supposed to be a really easy install, so just a couple minutes, I'll throw this in and then take the car for a drive, see how it feels. Well, that was easy. I would call this episode a success, and a surprising one at that. I thought this was going to take so much longer. I thought it was going to be a much more difficult process. But I have to thank Naptown Tuner on YouTube, who kind of showed the process of using heat and an impact over and over and over. The driver's side, I didn't really show it on camera, but it took me probably about a half hour of just going back, heat, impact, and it worked. I guess as far as the car feels with the new control arms, it feels great. Yeah, kind of what you would expect from, I wouldn't say new car because the car is lowered on air suspension, but it feels great. The transmission insert, that was the quickest modification in the history of time. I can feel it in the shifter handle. It does feel a little sturdier, but it's not adding a bunch of noise and vibration to the car, which is exactly what I want, because I still want this to not be a total track car or anything. And with the added stress that airing out this car puts onto the upper control arms, which you can see here, I'll hopefully see a bump in longevity to these bushings and ball joints that come with the control arm kit. So it's still comfortable, the handling is slightly improved, there's no more clunking noises up front, and the install was overall not as daunting as I thought it would have been. Exactly what I had hoped for, and more. So fear not, you too can replace your control arms with the right tools and patience. And fire. Anyway, that's it for this episode with more handling mods to come. Thanks for watching.